Hello, welcome to the Friday Business News Report. It's now time to bring you the feature on the show today. We are looking at one of the highlights of this week as the Nigerian Senate passed by midweek the sum of 982.729 billion naira as a supplementary budget for the 2021 fiscal year into law. Now, the Senate approved an upward review of its 6.9 billion from the initial amount of 895.842 billion naira transmitted to the National Assembly by President Muhammadu Buhari about 2 weeks ago. Now, the passage of the supplementary appropriation bill for this year followed the consideration of a report from the Committee on Appropriation during plenary. Accordingly, out of the sum of 982.7 billion naira passed, 123.3 billion naira is for recurrent expenditure, that's non-debt, and also 859.3 billion naira as contribution to the development fund. And for capital expenditure, 45.63 billion naira is also required for COVID-19 vaccine program, which would also be sourced through existing World Bank loans as well as other grants. The sum is 722.40 billion naira, which is also for capital expenditure on the procurement of additional equipment for the security and capital supplementation, would also be sourced from new borrowings. In line with the harmonized position with the House of Representatives counterpart, recommended an upward review of the funding of some security agencies that were grossly underfunded or not funded at all in the supplementary appropriation bill. Well, joining me now live via Skype to discuss this and much more, I have Public Finance and Policy Analyst Olusegun Elemo. Good to have you on the Breakfast Show this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, Segun, what do you make of the agenda set for the coverage of this supplementary budget, especially with dealing with the twin major challenges we have on ground, insecurity, and also the COVID-19 vaccine deployment programs? These are critical elements to economic recovery and looking at the forecast that was set so far for this year.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that the government is taking proactive steps now towards vaccination, and I feel that this should have happened earlier. But you know, the budget for COVID-19 was not captured originally in the 2021 budget, so there was, of course, need to then provide some covering for vaccines that will be procured, and that, as you said, is very, very key to economic activities and how we interact with the global economy. So that's fantastic. The only issue I have with, while I agree that the military needs to improve or increase its hardware, procurement, so it can fight the insecurity that we have currently, I feel like there is more that needs to be done more than procuring hardware. Perhaps we need to elevate intelligence gathering, because when you look at the nature of insecurity that we're facing right now, you would agree with me that hardware alone cannot solve the problem that we're in. Mind you, there's been increased budgeting for the military over the last decade or so, and of course there have also been allegations as to whether those hardwares were purchased and put to use. So all of that, I think we need to look at it, and not just to keep allocating funds to procuring hardware. The nature of insecurity that we're faced with right now require that we go a step further than just procuring hardware.
Well, it's also, the fund also goes beyond just procuring hardwares, because we have other security agencies also going to receive some of this funding, because it's quite critical. Looking at the police and other security agencies, we need more funding for them. But now, looking at forecasts a little more deeper, we have had projections from the Minister of Finance projecting a GDP growth rate of 4.2%, come next year, do you think this current budget has the sustaining power to support the platform for which this year's and next year's projections are premised? Because we've seen a ratio which some would say between the capital and recurrent expenditure cannot necessarily support a strong recovery. Do you share in this sentiment?
Absolutely. Let's look at, for instance, the assumptions for the 2021 budget. Of course, it was a 13 trillion, say for the supplementary that was just proposed. I think about ₦1 trillion now added, approximately. We had, revenue target of 7.8 trillion and more than 5 trillion naira deficit. Oil was supposed to sell, according to that budget, for $40 per barrel, but now, oil is around 74, 73, and, moving towards $75 per barrel. And the assumption in that budget as well is that it's naira to a dollar is 379, but today, even the CBN rate of 410 is not realistic. I mean, that's not the reality in the market. And a lot of, analysts have said that the CBN needs to review that rate to reflect the current nature of the market. But what's the performance of the 2021 budget according to what the minister presented when she did the MTEF presentation recently? Revenue targets, just prorated targets, just about 67%, and it was around 1.8 trillion. And expenditure was, had hit 92.7 trillion, the prorated target now, and it was, 92.7%, and that was about 4.8 trillion. Deficit was around 3 trillion. Prorated target as at May 2021. But the issue we have right now is that, the minister mentioned that the non-oil sector performed better than the oil sector, and you'll be wondering, what's happening? Why should the non-oil sector perform better than the oil sector when oil is now selling for $74, $73 per barrel? And that's because NNPC is paying a huge sum every day on subsidy, and nobody's verifying that payment. And that's what we're saying, that we need to get a third-party verification. And for me, I don't agree that we should continue to pay subsidy. It is not sustainable in the short term as it is currently. It is not sustainable even in the long term, because there are a lot of things jostling for resources right now. You can see now that supplementary budget, now being scattered here and there just because MDAs are not properly funded. Now, how much is NNPC paying every day? If you check what FAC allocation had been, that NNPC had withheld payments to FAC over the last couple of months, and we're paying about 9.8 billion naira per day on petroleum subsidy. If NNPC says that at some point we're consuming 103 million liters per day, if that is the case, it would have spent, as at May, about 1.4 trillion alone subsidizing petroleum products. That's not the only service that Nigerians, are getting on a daily basis.
Olusegun, I'd like you to hold your thoughts there. We'll have to take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll continue with this conversation.
Sometime we never see the kind things Nigeria they make, e no reach wetin we dey shopulate o. We even dey use $22 billion take bring things from obodo oyinbo every year. To bring better come inside we obodo Nigeria, na so our government arrange dem import policy come. Now, for us to survive, we must to learn how to feed we self. So far, that plan don nearly work finish, sake of CBN wey stand gidigba to support local farmers and small market people. Our plan to give 10 million people work with 12 products under 5 years don dey pure. We fit to do am. Make we buy Nigeria to grow Nigeria. Call your banker today for more information on how to get involved.
Since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in our country and the world at large, we have channeled our manpower to increase capacity for the production of medical ambulances. Though it has not been easy, as our core values involve responding to emergency situations and managing to deliver fast against all odds. Innocent vehicles will continue to satisfy the automobile needs of our country, both in emergency and normal situations. For country and for God, innocent vehicles drive with pride.
And you're still watching TVC Breakfast, the Friday edition. I have with me, joining me via Skype, Olusegun Elemo, Public Finance and Policy Analyst, looking at a breakdown of the supplementary budget and the economic impact it will have on the state of Nigeria's economy as we speak today. Olusegun, thank you very much for still standing by with us. Now, let's look at issues around transparency and following the money. Now, we definitely will still have bigger conversations around budget implementation, like you've highlighted, and also success rates between the 2020 budget performance. This year so far, we're half year. How do we see things going? But right now, beyond the budget breakdowns as being clear, strategic, and also supported by rules and regulations and laws to nip in the bud and also silence the noise of corruption, do you think we can actually silence this noise? Because when we have supplementary budgets or budgets being proposed, it comes with this air of concern as to how does this translate to real economic change in real terms?
Yeah, thank you. I think corruption is still playing a very big role in our economy today, and that's it's a fact. I mean, it's not just an assumption. I was at the Senate Committee on Finance hearing a few days ago, and some of the issues that were thrown up is how ministries, departments, and agencies are mismanaging revenues that should accrue to the Federation account. So it appears that today, every department of government, every agency of government, they've seen, their allocation to that agency or ministry as their own private money, and they utilize it anyhow. And in fact, in some cases, you have scheduled corporations that should remit to the Consolidated Revenue Fund, 80% of their operating surplus, not doing that. And many of them are defaulting. And just a few days ago, many even came up to say that the Committee on Finance should remove them from the scheduled corporation. I mean, you can imagine when the Senate President recently visited the President and said that Nigeria is a poor country and that we need to borrow as much as possible to cover for development deficit. My point is that with the fiscal pressure that we're faced with, as well as the monetary pressure, and it's very evident and clear, I don't think that the projections of the minister is feasible, and I feel that the National Assembly needs to place stronger oversight on the executive.
Thank you very much for your time on the Breakfast Show this morning. I like the way you signed out. We need to have stronger oversight and also checkmating strategies to ensure that we nip corruption in the bud. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Olusegun Elemo, this morning.
Thank you for having me.